Once again, our centrist corporate media colleagues, whether they are on TV or at elite publications like the New York Times and Washington Post, are deciding to cover political problems in a country our elite don't like. But they are covering it without mentioning how the United States is assisting in those problems happening in that said country. That country, of course, is Venezuela, and how our CIA has contributed to those problems for them by funding or influencing the opposition leadership against the Maduro government. And you wouldn't even know that if you had just watched or read our powerful centrist media colleagues. CBS, CNN, NBC, ABC, it doesn't matter what U.S. outlet, they all continue to do analogous things when it comes to covering any negative story from Venezuela that they see. If it's a food shortage crisis, they will cover those on the streets starving and exploit them for how they are in dire need of food. If it's toilet paper shortage, they will cover that as well. And if it's any critique by the opposition in regards to trying to say that the Maduro government set up a sham election that is illegitimate, they will have those quotes front line and center and then get instant analysis from anti-Venezuelan sources. It's how they always operate in situations like this. Now, some people, when they watch the beginning of this video, will automatically think that I am fully 100% behind everything that the Maduro government has done and that everything has been perfect in the Bolivarian revolution and that they are completely infallible in all of the problems that are taking place in Venezuela. This video isn't a full rubber stamp praise and adulation of the Maduro government. They would admit that they have made some mistakes that they could have avoided, as well as try to not have certain officials be engulfed in corruption charges. But no government around the world is perfect, and they would obviously admit that. One rationally could say, from a leftist perspective, that maybe the Chavez and especially the Maduro government shouldn't have focused solely on oil as the say and be and all in Venezuela, and that they probably should have tried to push for other sources to be prime key factors in their economy. But there is a reason why those oil prices plummeted and why the inflation for food has happened in Venezuela, and it is because of outside sources trying to damage Venezuela with any chance they could get. You had the United States urge Saudi Arabia, along with Israel, urge Saudi Arabia to sell cheap oil on the market, and that cheap oil led to the major diminishing prices of oil all around the world and truly damaged Venezuela's economy, as well as other countries who rely heavily on oil, petroleum being their prime source of their economy. With the driving force of the economy damaged by those price decreases, then you also had outside sources, particularly from the United States, lead to the inflation of food with the sabotage of not giving proper imports or not providing the best imports towards Venezuela, leading to those prices rising so much on foods and basic services. So clearly, the outside sources have tried to damage Venezuela with any chance they could get, and they were able to do so on those two vital fronts of damaging the oil prices and then raising the food prices and basic goods that Venezuelans need, just like any other person around the world. Now, despite those shady practices from us in America towards Venezuela, we still receive a myriad amount of oil from them. It is now over 700,000 barrels of petroleum that we get from Venezuela. But despite receiving that huge quantity of oil from Venezuela, we continue to do very shady, dubious things towards them with the sanctions that we have placed on Venezuela in the last few years. Back in 2015, President Obama placed sanctions on Venezuela through signing an executive order after Congress had voted for those sanctions to occur a few months prior. And then this past week, we've had President Trump issue sanctions on 13 Venezuelan officials for President Maduro not backing down on legitimizing and certifying the voting results this past weekend on the Constituent Assembly in Venezuela. But despite all those reports from our centrist, corporate, powerful media colleagues on Venezuela, there is still no mention from them on the CIA's plans on Venezuela. Just last week at the Aspen Institute in DC, you had Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, have a lovely little Q&A in which he so gleefully wanted to admit the Central Intelligence Agency's plans to try to topple the current government in Venezuela. He said, quote,
anytime you have a country as large and with the economic capacity of a country like Venezuela, America has a deep interest in making sure that it is stable and as democratic as possible. And so we're working hard to do that. I'm always careful when we talk about South and Central America and the CIA. There's a lot of stories. So I want to be careful with what I say. But suffice to say, we are very hopeful that there can be a transition in Venezuela. And the CIA is doing its best to understand the dynamic there so that we can communicate to our State Department and to others. The Colombians, I was just down in Mexico City and in Bogota week before last, talking about this very issue, trying to help them understand the things they might do so that they can get a better outcome for their part of the world and our part of the world.
So that statement from our CIA director, Mike Pompeo, candidly admitting that the agency wants regime change in Venezuela and that the CIA has been influencing on trying to make that happen against the Maduro government, you would think that statement would at least be plastered on our centrist corporate media colleagues' news packages or articles, just like the rest of their coverage has been on Venezuela in the last 2 months. And yet, it's like Mike Pompeo didn't even make that statement. Since you cannot find that statement or video footage of that statement on our centrist corporate media colleagues' media outlets. It's like this thing didn't even exist. Seems like another moment in which our centrist, powerful corporate media colleagues want to try to sweep another distasteful moment of U.S. imperialism. Pointing out any corruption that has occurred with the Maduro government is clear, fair game. And pointing out how maybe the Venezuelan economy was too centralized on petroleum is also worthy of legitimate analysis and critique. But if you claim that your news organization is covering everything out of Venezuela to the United States public without mentioning or even knowing the key tidbit of our CIA director openly trying to make regime change happen in Venezuela, then you are being a fraud to the public and you are again protecting the United States' interests of being imperialists once more. You could find an ABC, NBC, CNN, CBS full coverage of Mike Pompeo saying that Russia just loves to stick it to us. You can find that quote and that headline everywhere in their search. But you somehow can't find just even a simple quote about what he said about Venezuela. You can't find it anywhere on their websites. No matter how one may have legitimate critiques of the Maduro government, those critiques sure as hell can't come from anyone here in the United States, with how our taxpayer dollars and actions have contributed to the problems that Venezuelans are facing right now. And anyone from centrist, corporate, powerful media who are feeling that they are bringing the full story of Venezuela to the American public without mentioning how we have caused the exacerbation of those problems in Venezuela shows the frauds that they are and how they are willingly or unwillingly continuing U.S. imperialism on the rest of the world. For TYT Politics, I'm Andrew Jones, and there will be no sleeping under the rug news coverage or analysis here. Take care. Have a good day.